In January of 1961, President John F. Kennedy delivered his inauguration speech after having taken the oath of office as the president. And in that speech, he offered what has since become one of the most memorable, one of the most famous lines in all of American political history. President Kennedy said, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask rather what you can do for your country." I think the point he was trying to make was, in some sense, a mirror of what Jesus was trying to make today. I think President Kennedy was saying that the point of being a member of a community, a citizen of a nation, is not about just simply seeking what's good for you, but rather committing yourself to the good of others, being dedicated and focused on living in such a way as for the value of others. We call this a commitment to the common good. I think that lies at the heart of what Jesus was saying today. I wonder if you could picture the scene. Jesus is walking down a dusty road with a massive crowd of people behind him. This is the same crowd who had witnessed the many miracles he had done. They had seen the demons cast out of those who were possessed. They saw bread and fish multiplied to feed tens of thousands of people. They saw the sick healed, the deaf given their hearing back, the lame being able to walk again. They even saw the daughter of a man named Jairus being raised from the dead, a 7-year-old girl. They were overcome with joy and excitement at the idea of all of the great things. And here's the point: the great things that Jesus could do for them. They were following him in some sense because up until that point, they had really gotten a lot from Jesus. A couple of free meals, some wonderful miracles, and sights that are hard to tell and wonderful to behold. But Jesus wanted to challenge them to a very different discipleship. He wanted to say to them, don't just follow me because up to this point you've gotten something good from me. Rather, I want you to follow me to be dedicated to my mission. The mission of the cross. I worry at times we've over-decorated the cross. We've turned it into a gentle metaphor for uncomfortable self-sacrifice, when in fact, at the time of Jesus, there was no more horrible torture or death ever devised by humans than the cross. There was nothing more humiliating or defeated than the Roman cross. And Jesus calls them to that agenda, that life. Now, he did not literally mean we've got to start hating our family, because that would be contradictory. Because earlier in his preaching, he says, love your enemies. It would be very backwards if he calls us to love enemies but hate our own family. So Jesus isn't giving us a literal instruction here. Rather, he's using the strongest language possible, we call that hyperbole, to challenge us to think differently. Take seriously the self-sacrifice that he's calling us to. And so he tells a couple of little parables. Who can sit down and build something great without being very careful to make sure that they can afford to finish the project? As you follow Jesus, he's calling you, he's calling me to sit down and calculate carefully, do we have what it takes to remain faithful? Will we still be able to keep following him no matter what happens? Then likewise, he tells a little parable about a king who's getting ready to be defeated in battle. I think this is so meaningful because today so many people are preaching about Christianity in our culture. It's called Christian nationalism. There are these messages floating all over our culture today where people are saying that Jesus really wants us to be powerful and influential and significant and rich and all this other kind of nonsense that is directly the opposite of what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, if you're going to follow me, you're going to be more like the king who's getting ready to lose a battle, so you better sue for peace, because what you're endeavoring to do is not going to bring you worldly success. Being a disciple of Jesus means we end up living a life that looks like the cross, not the life that looks like some other measure of worldly greatness. That's what we're called to. Anyone who's ever seriously tried to live out their faith here in college knows that's not an easy thing to do. That takes some real courage. Even if, as we wrestle with this, we find we're not perfect at it. We make mistakes, we sin, we fall short. And this is one of the other things that I kind of want to toss on top of this gospel. As challenging as Jesus is, that he calls us to be really deliberate about the sacrifice of following him, and that's absolutely true. I also want to add something that I say all the time because I think Jesus would expect this to be clarified as well. If we hear his word seriously, we realize that this is not easy. However, you don't have to be perfect to be his disciple. I say this all the time. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what happened to you, what you did on Friday night. I know what happened on Friday night. You are still wanted and welcome. No matter the struggle, no matter the failures, no matter how many, if you think about the parable about building a tower, no matter how many construction delays you find in your life, no matter how many speed bumps you find along the way, no matter how many U-turns, no matter how many faults, no matter how many times you say, I wanted this, but I fell short, and oh my goodness, things are a mess, it doesn't matter. If you're willing to try, you'll find a welcome here. Let's do this together. Because as challenging as Jesus' words are, I'm convinced we cannot do this alone. I know, I speak for myself, I can't live this life by myself. I need others. That's why I'm part of a community, a Franciscan religious community. I can't do this alone. And so if you endeavor, if you decide, if you want to try, if you just want to try to be a follower of Jesus, you're welcome here. No matter how much you struggle with any sin or anything else going on in your life, you are wanted and welcome here because I want to create a community where we can try to follow Jesus together.